Yes.
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 Okay. All right. So, Ellen gave me a very gracious introduction. Civic engagement beyond voting is truly a labor of love. We did start back in 2017, right when Indivisible National was starting up, when we weren't an indivisible group when we started. So we don't have indivisible in our name, but we are, in fact, an indivisible group and have been since, I believe, 2018. And as Ellen said, we are nonpartisan, but that doesn't mean we're neutral. And I always like to say we do frame our information in that way. And I know you all are receptive to that, but I always like to say that. And that will lead me directly into what I want to talk about today. This is a brand new presentation for us. What I'm giving you is a somewhat truncated version because some of it is duplicative of what Jody is going to be talking about. So hopefully the two will mesh pretty well. So what we're talking about today is media literacy. And we are in an unbelievably confusing media moment or time. It's more than a moment. And that is one of the things I want to address. And we put this training under the umbrella of what we call changing the conversation. And I know that's exactly what Jody is going to be talking about. We do not need to accept the talking points or the frame that we are being presented. And everywhere we turn in media today, we're getting either misleading news, whether intentionally or unintentionally, or information. Is that true? Is it not true? And we turn to our trusted news sources and find that they may have dramatically changed. So this is a first draft of trying to address the media moment that we're in. So what I want to talk about, and believe me, when I was doing this, I went down quite a few rabbit holes, but this was the one that opened my eyes the most, and it's truth and objectivity. So I'll talk about that. We also will talk about misinformation. We're not going to cover the whole breadth of it, but to some extent, because Jody is also going to cover that. And then I'll talk about media fragmentation, which is what we're seeing a lot of, but we're also seeing a huge amount of media consolidation. So I will talk about that. And then I'll take a brief detour into artificial intelligence. And I know you had a fabulous training pretty recently on AI. And hopefully somebody will drop the link in the chat to that training if you missed it. And I am not going to go into nearly that depth with AI, but just touch on it a little bit. And then we will also talk about what you can do. So this is going to look very existential, and to a certain extent, it absolutely is. Is it possible to make sense of the world? I struggle with that every single day. I don't really have the answer to that, but we do make some sense out of what we see, and that is truly what our brain does. It takes all of this input and fits it within a point of view, a frame, something that we can understand. But it's not easy to do that in today's world. We seek meaning, we seek certainty, we seek explanations, and we are not in that time. So David Eagleman, in his book Incognito, The Secret Lives of the Brain, said instead of reality being passively recorded by the brain, it is actually constructed by it. People use spirituality, religion, cosmic powers, karma, any type of framework to reconcile negative events that make no sense to them. So is it possible to trust the media? Well, what is trust? And can we truly trust any media outlet? Developing our critical thinking skills is part of lifelong education. So we will also say trust but verify, in the words of President Reagan. So what do we really need to know? Think about what you want to know as well as where to go for it. Do we really need to know every dang thing? So those are some questions that came up to me as I started looking at truth and objectivity, and half full, half empty. And this is one way of looking at reporting or news. If one person says it's raining and another person says it's dry, it's not your job to quote them both. Your job is to look out the effing window and find out which is true. So that is good. That is a good thing to be aware of. However, it's truly not even as simple as that. And as I was working on this, I went back and read for another training I'm developing, I read a Barbara Kingsolver's very first book, which is nonfiction. She was a reporter in Tucson during the 1983 Phelps Dodge mining strike. And in the preface to her book, she said this: true objectivity may only be possible for those who do not care in the least what happens next. An undirected camera snapping at random, the sound and the fury, a tale told by an idiot. And she found as she got into reporting that strike that it was very, very difficult to portray that both a neutrality is truly what she was talking about. And another person that I read, Wesley Lowery, who's a media analyst, said it's a bunch of people telling themselves they're objective journalists and then writing their opinions into the news and doing so by deciding what stories they cover and what stories they don't cover. So he is saying that these decisions, what stories to run, what resources to invest, who to quote, are limited by the people who make the decision and the interests they serve. And in the history of American journalism, he said these decisions have been made almost exclusively by upper class white men. And I think we see that every day in terms of the news sources that we consume. So we can ask ourselves, who makes these decisions? What issues are covered? What stories are being told? Who is being cited as an expert? Whose voices are included and whose are excluded? So objectivity, Wesley Lowery also said, has been wielded to silence people who do not fit with the politics of the people who own and operate the newspapers. So take that under advisement. And another media analyst I stumbled across was Lewis Raven Wallace, and we are incidentally going to be having an In Conversation Zoom event with him in a couple of weeks. And he has a very interesting perspective. And I'll just read this quote. Final note here: the center that is viewed as neutral can and does shift. We know that as the Overton window, frankly. Studying the history of journalism is a great help in understanding how centrism is more a marketing tactic to reach broad audiences than actual neutrality. Many of the journalists who've told the truth in key historical moments have been outliers and members of an opposition here and in other countries. And right now, as norms of government shift toward a post-fact framework, I'd argue that any journalist invested in factual reporting can no longer remain neutral. So that was a rabbit hole that I went down, but I think it's really very illuminating to think, to sort of shift your thinking about what you are getting from the news and what you can expect. So just at random, I picked a headline out of the New York Times, and headlines are notorious for both neutered language and euphemistic headlines. So most people reading this headline might reasonably gather that President Biden might have Parkinson's disease and is hiding it from the public. The story itself did not support that reaction. So if you get many paragraphs down into the story, it dutifully reported that the same doctor who has a broader specialty had also visited the Obama White House in 2012 10 times and has been a regular consultant to the White House medical team for a dozen years. So context is what creates the whole story. A snapshot versus a moving picture, a video, what came before, what comes after. So misinformation can be on purpose or it can be accidental. So one way of looking at, is this true or is it accurate? Is it in the truthful realm? Is definitely to look at the news source and really vet your news sources very, very critically. So look at the about section. What does the outlet say about itself on the website? Where does the funding come from? What is the ownership? How easy or difficult does the news outlet make it to submit feedback or contact them? What are their ethics and standards? Do they have ethics and standards? What kinds of standards and ethical principles does the outlet say it follows? Corrections and clarifications. How does the outlet handle corrections? And for long or complex stories, how open is the outlet to showing the reporting process? In a poll, we call that methodology. What is the methodology you use to construct this poll, to construct the questions? So how did they go about it? Now, there's a site called Ad Fontes Media Bias Chart. And what Ad Fontes means is to the source. And this is a media watchdog. It's based in Colorado. It's a public benefit corporation. And this is the main part of its work. So what I did is I Googled who owns Ad Fontes Media Bias, and I looked that up. And so it was actually pretty interesting. So the chart markets its analysis to advertising, looking for third-party rankings of news sources in assessing brand safety, and is generally considered a simple guide, but obviously not the sole authoritative source. So what this shows is on the left-right axis is the political bias that they found in that media, and the vertical axis represents the quality or in-depth degree of reporting. So it's really not, it's a scatter plot, really. It's not what they call a bell curve. So it's not a continuum. It's really where does somebody fall on the vertical and the horizontal axes. So it doesn't mean that the people in the middle or the news sources are neutral or unbiased or a political center. Frankly, I don't think there is such a thing as centrist. So everyone in every media outlet is a mixture of beliefs and editorial decisions, and those depend pretty heavily on human nature. So, to talk about media consolidation, it's actually, as you know, every day in the news, we see more, CBS is capitulating to, Trump because they need to be approved by the um, S because they need to be approved for a merger. And there are more mergers going on with ABC and this and that. So we are just seeing a gigantic amount of consolidation. And what I can call this is e pluribus unum, out of many, one. So there is a huge amount of consolidation in our media sources. So, according to the Free Press, 36% of Americans now say they have no trust at all in media. 8,300 newsroom jobs were lost between 22 and 24. We have seen that locally, frankly. Gannett, that owns AZ Central, has allowed a whole bunch of their veteran reporters and editorial writers to take buyouts. They are losing money, they are cutting back, and that is shocking and really, really disturbing. And nine of America's 10 richest men are media executives and owners. Now, I looked for who are those owners? Who are those media titans? And I'll tell you, I couldn't find them and partly that's because nobody has done that I could find. And if you know a source, please, because this source is 10 years old, but it shows even 10 years ago how much consolidation was going on in terms of television and film, music, and print. And all of this is owned by Rupert Murdoch's Media Corp. So, in addition to media consolidation, we are seeing a huge amount of media fragmentation. And I looked this, I hopefully Google got this right, ex uno pluria, out of one many. So we are seeing a huge amount of consolidation as well in terms, and I'm sure you are doing this. You are saying, here's a newsletter I like, here's one source I can trust. Maybe I can balance that off this. Here's something about this subject that I'm interested in. And that is what a lot of people are doing. Now, this is a Pew Research graph. Left-right placement represents the percent of people who regularly get news from that source. And the size of the circle is the percent who have heard of the news source. So in terms of where do they regularly get it, right over here on the right, you can see it's a lot of television, frankly. And there are some bubbles. A lot of people have heard of these other sources, but it is not where they regularly get their news. So that is something to know about the audience to the media right now. Now, how much trust do people have in those news sources? So the size of the circle represents the number of respondents who have heard of that news source. And the left-right placement on this graph is how much respondents trusted the news source. So, I mean, all of this is a moment in time. However, it is indicative. And you can see that there are, a lot of people, for example, who have heard of the New York Post, but they don't trust it. So that is something also to be aware of. So what are the takeaways from some of that consolidation and deconsolidation? Well, traditional news sources are losing influence. Video content is increasing its influence, whether you like it or not. And by video, I mean things like YouTube, and also Substack has a lot of live video. So people, and Instagram has a lot of video content. So whether you like it or not, people are not reading as much. Fragmentation is increasing, not decreasing. There is a vast news gap that leaves the less privileged by the wayside. I don't know where to go that I can trust. Younger users gravitate to social media, and they also read the comments. And those comments, if you have read some of them, they can be very disturbing. So just know that those are influencing young users. Now, AI, artificial intelligence, is new on the scene. It has a mixed reception. Younger users, not surprisingly, are more likely to adopt. And about 19% of everyone in the US actually accesses news through AI chatbots. So we should be aware of that. 15% of Americans consume news through podcasts. And of those podcasts, about 50-50 are media driven versus personality driven. And you can certainly say, Joe Rogan's podcast, or, if Stephen Colbert were to have a podcast in the future, those would be very personality driven. So those are people that we trust rather than media sources. So a very quick detour into AI. There is just general artificial intelligence. Believe me, know very little about AI. I know just enough to be dangerous. So it's helping you, it's duplicating your cognitive abilities. It's looking at the whole world and synthesizing information that's there. Generative AI is taking that information and creating something out of it. And then large language models are a program that has been trained using a huge amount of data to recognize language patterns. So these models can generate content based on the patterns of word and phrase usage. So believe me, that is not the whole story of AI. But in a sort of do you trust, not trust sense, these are just some of the recent headlines. The Chicago Sun-Times prints an AI-generated summer reading list with books that don't exist. And what really scares me is AI creating fake legal cases in real courtrooms. And that is something to be super concerned about. A supermarket AI meal planner suggested a recipe that would create chlorine gas. And, I can laugh, but that is truly not funny. Now, the whole internet was transfixed by some of these so-called doorbell cameras of bunnies, or, jumping up and down on trampolines, or a bear, or, a dog and a cat, or actually it's a wolf and a cat, or a coyote and a cat coming to your door. These are entirely fake. And more deep fakes are other images that can be very, very difficult to discern, especially if you're Donald Trump, as a deep fake. So there are computer created artificial video or audio recordings that are manipulated to make it appear as though a person is saying or doing something they never did. And it can be very difficult to identify deep fakes. You have to really, really scrutinize it. And, I've been fooled, not an insignificant number of times. And one of the things one of the sites I really recommend is Snopes.com. If you're looking at a piece of information and you say, is this just an internet circulated fake? You can go to Snopes, and they actually do a huge amount of original reporting about fake information that's out there. So there are a few things if you really scrutinize something, but also you can double check. Google is my friend. I Google everything. So the last thing I want to say about the media environment that we're in is please, please preserve your sanity. And I confront this personally every single day. I am a voracious news reader, and I have had to really, really limit and protect myself from a whole variety of news sources. Please avoid being overwhelmed and pay attention. I know when I feel that anxiety rising, I have to turn away. I have to look at something else. Something that I'm doing or reading is making my anxiety go up. So also look at how does the news connect with the interests and actions that you have, and curate your news sources by subject. And I know DORR has a media sourcing list or trustworthy news sources, and we're also working on one to use in a toolkit to accompany this presentation. And then read for enjoyment too. I read several fiction and nonfiction books, totally disconnected to politics over the summer, and it was really refreshing. So thank you so much. This has been a partial debut of our, oh, now I have to see how to stop sharing. Oh my God, I don't see it.
There should be a little where you have your bar with the mute and unmute, which will be separate from those screen you're sharing. There should be a stop sharing.
There it is.
Right there.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I have too many windows open. So great.
Ellen,
So
does Ellen want to take questions after each presentation, or wait till the whole program is done?
Why don't we have Jody come on next, and then we'll see what we have time for.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. That was fabulous. We could do hours on that. Thank you. So now we'll hear from Jody, who is in charge. She's the chief brigader of the Truth Brigade.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome, Jody. Thanks.
Hi, Cathy. That was, so thorough and so interesting, and so obviously terrifying. But hey, we're all here together, right? So I'm going to go through the same thing as Cathy, where I'm going to share my screen, and let's cross our fingers that I get all the tech right. Here we go. Share screen options. Who can share? That's me. Okay. Again, can you all see?
No.
It's
Oh, you
getting there.
can't.
Oh, yes, we
We
got
got
it.
it now.
Oh, great. Yeah. All right. Excellent. So, hello, everybody. I don't know how many people are actually there in person. And I see there's a bunch of people on the Zoom call, and we're sort of, so hello, everybody, whether you're in person or on the video call. I'm really happy to be here, and I've had such an enjoyable time just planning this out with your wonderful team there. So much appreciation to everybody. I think you're very lucky to have the leadership that you do. As was said, my name is Jody Rein, and I'm a senior manager with Indivisible National. And one of the programs I developed is the Indivisible Truth Brigade, which has now been going for quite a while. And just to follow on from Cathy, I know my role was primarily to talk about what we can do. And I just wanted to pause for a moment just to acknowledge, all of us, I think, are reeling in the same way from the news that we've just been watching over the last several days unfold, just watching the, continued destruction of impartial media. And so the answers that I'm going to provide to you are the best we can do right now. And just know for now, we're all in this together and we're all continuing to work on it together. I popped in this little chart down here just to scare you some more. I was thinking about while Cathy was talking, the one thing that I was remembering is that Media Matters also did a recent study where they showed that in online media, like podcasts and such, it's 9 out of 10 places are right leaning, and not just right, but far right leaning. So more good news. So what I'm going to talk about today is go through the Truth Brigade and Disinfo 101, and then we'll do a little mini conversation workshop, and then I'll provide a few notes. And the way it's going to work is I'll probably ask for some help from our hosts, and if the people who are in the room want to answer some questions out loud. I'm not sure how that might work, but I also have a way for everybody to participate either in the chat or in the room. So I love this quote. I use it a lot. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase, which I think is exactly where we are today. We have to have faith, and we have to be with one another. And we know that, regimes have come and gone throughout history, and now we're facing our own really challenging time, but we soldier on. I wanted to also take just a moment to address what happened with the Charlie Kirk shooting, because there's so much disinformation flying around. It is just absolutely mind-boggling. And just to let everybody know, Indivisible's statement generally is we are nonviolent, and that's something, whatever you hear out there, the mantra is we are nonviolent, and we're peaceful. And it's a challenging environment because that's a lot of the disinformation that we'll see. In terms of Truth Brigade recommendations around the shooting, I'm going to be going through our general recommendations, and they're not any different, because the philosophies and strategies we've developed have been developed based on years of research from all different sciences. And just because things get worse doesn't mean that we change our tactics. We just double down. So I was wondering, I'd love to hear from you a little bit, if you wouldn't mind writing in the chat if you're on Zoom. And if I'm not sure how I can hear the people in the room, I'll let someone who's hosting let me know if there's a way to do that. But I'm really curious as to, here we are with all this going on. What inspires you to resist? If you wouldn't mind just popping in the chat. I assume the chat's open to everybody.
Do you want some shout outs from here as well?
Yeah, both. I just love to hear, just think about, what keeps you inspired? What gives you solace? Just a couple of words.
Got any ideas? What inspires you to resist?
Freedom.
Freedom. Yeah. Some people say their grandchildren, for example.
Safety. It's the right thing to do.
Yep. Doing the right thing is always good. Now, I'm not seeing anything being written in the chat. Does everybody have fearful, vulnerable Oh, so they're wanting to defend vulnerable population. Oh, great. Truth will overcome falsehood in the end. Love that.
Holding on to democracy.
Holding on to democracy. Yes. We are looking for positivity right now, is what gives you inspiration. Not what is the bad stuff, but what inspires you to stay in this fight.
We got one more here in the audience.
I don't recognize my country.
Okay.
Yeah. And I love this one too, the very idea of America as I've always believed it will be. So yes, thank you all. Just a little, we'll be doing a lot of interactive things like that. So that was some good practice. So the Indivisible Truth Brigade grassroots community, what we do is we effectively disrupt the flow of disinformation and misinformation. We're the largest grassroots program to counter disinformation in the country. We've trained 17,000 people directly, at least 75,000 people from trainers who've trained other people. We have 600 million social media impressions and thousands of conversations. And I've been told, I've presented this before, that is thousands of letters to the editor, not hundreds. And what we do is we disrupt the acceptance of destructive lies through conversations, posts, and letters. We're doing it personally. So everything I'm going to be talking about today isn't about getting any of the bad guys to stop being bad guys, because we're not going to be able to do that. The Truth Brigade doesn't try to get big tech to stop being big, awful tech, or for government to change regulations. Our work is very much on the ground, person to person. So how do we do it? Well, we use evidence-based disruption strategies. We become trusted messengers, first of all. We start with shifting our own mindsets, and then we name shared values. We don't engage with trolls. We don't repeat disinformation. We don't argue. And we prompt independent thinking and source checking. Now, I'm going to be coming back to this again and again in this presentation, but I want to take a moment again to engage you all. The notion of shifting our own mindsets and naming shared values, that can sound like a lot of empty words, right? I'm sure people are like, I'm not grounded. I don't know what that means. So let's take a moment and just give it a go and see if we can figure out what that actually means. So my first question, what are some values that makes the good guy a good guy in a movie? So when you think about that, how do you know who's the good guy and who's the bad guy when you're just getting to know the characters? Kindness,
music.
I think. The white hat, Cathy. That's funny. Anybody else from the room?
The background music.
Background music. The good guy helps others. So we've got the good guy or gal or them is kind, empathetic, helping others. You don't see, in the giant multi-million-dollar movies, you don't see someone, generally speaking, cheer for evil. Often if there's a bad guy that you start to like, it's because they have redeeming human values. They protect the vulnerable. Exactly. So let's think about that again. We're, again, getting our heads around what values we might share with all human beings. So what rules do most parents teach their kids? Right, left, center? What do you teach your kids? To share? Yeah. Don't lie. Exactly.
The golden rule.
The golden rule. Exactly. Do unto others.
Trust.
Trust.
Respect.
Be accountable, right? Respect. Yeah. And again, these are values that we need to hold on to today in this talk and then throughout, whenever we're starting to despair that we're all so different from one another. And then finally, what do most people want for their own families and for their friends? Might be things like economic security. That would be something that most people want. Use your words. I love that. Do you have any ideas for value that most people just want for their families?
Health.
Health,
Safety.
exactly. Safety, exactly.
Opportunity.
Opportunity, tolerance, respect. You guys rock. You've got it. So this is what the Truth Brigade is all about, as you'll see, that we want to get not only ourselves, but everybody we talk to start thinking about what they value. Because when they start thinking about what they value, they think twice about lies spread by people who don't share those values. So that's where we get to disinformation. Thank you for your participation. So just quickly about the Truth Brigade, we launch campaigns monthly and webinars and on Slack, which is a social sharing platform. We do ongoing mobilizations that we tell everybody about in the webinars and weekly emails. And we just started monthly community messaging storms for letters to the editor and social media. Our first one is this afternoon, so a little bit late for anybody here. I mean, I'll be glad to send you the link, but we'll see how it goes. It's brand new. So let's talk about disinformation. Disinfo versus misinfo. Cathy talked about this a little bit, but it's also very important when you're figuring out how to fight back. So disinformation is deliberate. That's the important thing to keep in mind. Bad actors, not that many bad actors. It's only a few hundred or 1,000 people who are deliberately lying to you. Unfortunately, they have a lot of money and a lot of power. But the number of disinformation that's deliberately spread is very small. Most people are misinformed. They're not deliberately sharing lies. They're not trying to gain personal profit or power. These people, the misinformed people, and our own networks are the Truth Brigade's audience. So what the bad guys don't want us to know is that most people do care about the truth. There's lots of studies that show, again, the values we all share. Really important, these bad actors who are sharing, who are spreading the lies, they don't care about climate. They don't care about immigration. They don't care about crime. They don't care about, anything that you hear someone trying to get everybody else mad about. It's not like the people who are spreading the lies actually care. That's why they're able to jump from side to side to side. All they care about is triggering other people. They create fake problems and fears and divisions to position themselves as the only solution. That's the why behind disinformation. That's why authoritarians always use it to gain power. Issues don't matter. Triggering human fears are what they want to do. So, quick question for all of you again. Why do you think people buy into these lies? What do you think? Since so many of us do share the same values, you have some ideas? And I think I'll just go ahead because I don't want to go too long. Fear, exactly. Yes. I'll wait for a couple more and then I'll share a few.
Saying things they want to hear.
People see things what they want. Exactly. I would call that confirmation bias. We dismiss information that isn't ideologically resonant. We're conditioned to believe people. Yeah, we're conditioned to trust. Thanks, Cathy. And then who has time? Something as simple as that. Who has time to stop and think and reflect? Echo chambers, I see that in the chat. Absolutely, more and more. Heuristics is a really interesting thing. Our brains remember, we perceive the things we hear a lot and remember, like slogans, lies, rhymes, images, videos, as true, which is really interesting. I think we all know that how, you remember things you hear a lot, but not only do you remember it, but it becomes true in our brains. Again, this is whatever side of the political spectrum we're on. Disinformation is designed to engage our caveman brain. Exactly. Oh, wow. Whoever wrote about critical thinking, that was exactly what I popped up on the screen. Thanks, William. So when we are afraid, when we're outraged, when we're stressed, we don't think straight, whether we're trying to, pass a test at school and we get all nervous, or we're scared that someone's going to harm our families and we can't think straight. Emotions block critical thinking. Critical thinking leads to be discerning about disinformation. So how do we fight back? So for the Truth Brigade, all of our communications rest on a 3-part framework we call the Indivisible Truth Sandwich. And everything that I'm going to talk with you about the practical side, relies on everything I've just told you in terms of what we've learned. Pretty straightforward. We start by discovering common ground, which means we name the values we share with someone else. Why do we do that? It's because if you're having a conversation with somebody and you start off arguing, telling them they're wrong, speaking stridently, what happens? What happens if someone comes up to you and says, you know what, you're wrong about that? What do? Do you want to stick around?
No.
No, exactly. No, you get tense. And we all have to remind ourselves that any conversation has to start with a common sense commonality. And then we disrupt, which means we ask an inoffensive question to cause a pause. So cause people to stop and think. And then we dream and share a vision. So the way that might work in practice is if the disinformation is that immigrants take jobs away, the discover session would mean you say what you have in common. So here's an example. Sounds like we're both concerned about our family's financial future. The disruption to cause the pause, we might say, I hear you. did this happen to you or anyone you know? It's not an attack. It's a genuinely interested question, but it makes people think. And then dream. We restate the truth and inspire. It's been good to talk. Even though we landed in different places, it's clear we want to do right by our families. Now, when we showed one online message to voters that followed this framework, the intent to share dropped by 14%. So that's cool. And a lot of other studies have shown the same thing. I'm going to skip over much of this because we've already talked about it. Let's see. Yeah. The one thing I do want to point out is we all have to be aware of the attitude that we have. If only they knew all the facts, they would feel different. You've got to respect other people. They have their reasons. They may understand the truth of something and still want to take an action that might feel just impossible for people, who don't want to do it. So people have their own reasons. Maybe it's, their families, or maybe their religion, and maybe they think that some religious views are more important than, anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm stumbling and trying to give you an answer. So we're not going to do this, but I'm going to ask that you do it just sort of silently as I keep on talking. And let's just shake around, because we're going to be doing some interactive conversation role play. And I want to make sure that you kind of get all this negative stuff out of your head. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Shake out your hands, whatever you like. So we're going to are you guys doing it in person? Hope so.
Yes, we are.
Yay. I
The
like
whole
to spin
room is
around,
quaking.
too. Changing my perspective by spinning around. All right, so here we're going to do a workshop, which, of course, by when you have, a half an hour to do a talk, it's going to be shortened. But again, remember, 85% of disinfo is shared accidentally. Okay, so we're going to have a conversation. First thing we do is you choose your who. You can have an impromptu conversation, but you want to talk with people who are, in your judgment, persuadable and unlikely to trigger you. Very important. Also important, protect yourself. You need to walk away if you feel in any way uncomfortable. You can use some really straightforward language. Just say, I'm so sorry, I have to interrupt as I have an obligation. Perhaps we can talk again. I'd like to talk more about this, but not now. You excuse yourself with respect, but get out of there. You don't want to, we're not trying to convince people who are far, far, far away from our own views. We don't need that. We just need, a good, 5% more people who are thinking twice about disinformation is a lot of people. So let's test all this together. Can we really find common ground with the misinformed? So this is for the top bun. We're going to start really easy. Let's say I like purple, you like yellow. You say yellow things need to stick together, purple things are dangerous. What might we have in common?
Colors.
What is that?
We like colors.
We like colors, exactly. What else?
Fear.
What is that?
Fear.
She's talking.
Dangerous, yeah.
Fear, did you say?
Fear.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's great. No one said that before. Yes, it's certainly possible that we both are, we want to protect ourselves. And judgment. Cool. Okay. So I'll put up what I was thinking here was bright colors, rainbows, and sprinkles. That's where my head is. But still, danger, judgment, all that, you can, if you feel like that's what you have in common with this particular person, go for it. So if you're going to do a conversation starter based on all this, it might be something like, sounds like we both, and then you would fill in the blank. Sounds like we both like bright colors. Sounds like we both are concerned about keeping our families safe.
Oh, good one.
Sounds like we both, let's see, in the judgment, let's see, what would that be? Sounds like we both have strong opinions about colors. That might be a good one. Or
Sounds
so
like we
you
both
like
like-
XXX too? All right, I hear
Like-
somebody talking. Let me stop talking for a second and tell me what you said.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like we both like sprinkles on our ice cream.
You bet. You bet. It is amazing how well this works. I know this sounds really obvious, but I've done this in so many conversations with people who are afraid I'm going to try to persuade them or I'm going to argue with them. Instead, when I say something that we can both agree on, I literally visually see shoulders drop. I see defenses go away. I see someone who suddenly is open to talking to me a little bit more. Might be a little bit, let's see. I'm going to skip over this slide because it's a little bit if we have time at the end, I'll go into that. But let's do another exercise. So this one is a little bit triggering. Let's say I like fast food, you like fancy restaurants, and then you say, everyone who eats fast food wants to take all our jobs. What might we have in common? You know what I appreciate would be great is if maybe one of our hosts could say into the microphone what somebody says in the audience, because I can't hear you.
Somebody raise your hand if you have a shout out there.
We like to eat.
We like to eat, exactly. We don't like to cook at home.
We like small checks at the end of the meal.
Small checks, there you go. Going out, eating, not cooking. Even though the take all our jobs part, that could be quite triggering, right? So conversation starter might be, just as, we guess, sounds like we both like going out, like eating meat. Always speak from the heart, gain trust through genuine respect. I love that whoever iPhone is, who's communicating in the chat. So here's a tougher one. I believe the administration is cutting important programs and doing harm. You believe it's cutting waste and saving taxpayer money. What might we have in common? Looks like my answers popped up ahead of time, but I think this might help you think. We might be concerned about the health of our democracy. We may both care about fiscal responsibilities. We might both have respect for individuals. So even someone who is still defending the administration, who has cut our everything from, protecting the planet to protecting our public health to, USAID, all those things, even if someone who's there and saying, you know what, I still think it's good for, my pocketbook, you might say, this is how you would open a conversation. Sounds like we both want our government to be fiscally responsible. All right, so what happens next, as I mentioned, is you begin, after you build trust, you ask gentle questions, and then you might describe the world as you both want it to be. So we're going to do one role play because I think we're getting pretty near. Am I at the end of my time, Ellen? About 5 minutes, I'm thinking.
No, we've still got time. We go till 11.
Okay, I can talk.
Okay, we'll just allow a little bit of time at the end for some questions.
That's great.
Thanks,
All
Jody.
right, so I need a volunteer, someone who's not afraid to. You can talk
Anybody here
into.
want to volunteer?
What's that?
Okay, we have a volunteer here. We've got Robert who's going to volunteer.
Great, excellent, Robert. So you'll be talking. So you get to be the misinformed person, and you get to make the statement. And this is, you can ignore what says JR reminder. That's for me. So you get to say out loud what's written here or something like that.
The whole medical industry just wants my money and pushes expensive pills that don't do anything. I'd rather control my own health by clean living.
Wow, you sound like you believe that really firmly. Is that right? You're against the whole medical industry?
I'm conscientiously misinformed, yes.
Conscientiously misinformed. Wow. You know what? Don't you listen to your doctor? I mean, haven't you been, heard what's going on? Haven't you heard all the studies that show that a lot of these other cures are like quack cures?
She just wants my money.
She, listen to that.
What, wait, I can't hear you if you're talking.
He said that his doctor just wants his
Your
money.
doctor just wants your money. Okay, cool. So that's the top on. What do you think? Did this conversation open or build trust?
No. What do you know
How
about-
come? And you can write in the chat as well as speak.
How do you know how to live clean? Somebody had to tell you about that. Do you trust them over your doctor? I mean, you can't just say, I'm gonna live clean. You have to have information.
I don't know if you could hear that.
I could. What I'm wondering is, did my response build trust?
No.
Did invalidate his concern.
Absolutely not. And why didn't it?
It was actually insulting and it dismissed him.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no common thread.
Yeah.
Yep. Just went off on a tangent. So why don't we try it again? All right, Robert, time to go.
Okay, the
Okay.
whole medical industry just wants my money and pushes expensive pills that don't do anything. I'd rather control my own health by clean living.
Boy, I sure hear you, Robert. You know, when I see how much money it costs just for, pills that I think they can get in Europe much cheaper, it makes me crazy. Does that bother you as well?
It really does.
Yeah, man. And it sounds like for both of us, having a feeling of control over what we do to keep ourselves healthy is a really important value. Would
That's
you say
true.
that? Is that something you think about a lot?
I have to agree with you.
Yeah. For me, I find it very confusing when I hear a lot of alternative medicines. And then I also think about how, like, when my mom got super sick and had to go to the hospital, how much modern medicine actually saved her life. And I don't know, I have a little trouble figuring all that out. Have you had any experiences like that where you've torn between sort of, both kinds of medicine?
Well, when something really bad happens, like you break your arm, you don't want to take alternative medicine or take a pill.
Yeah.
You want
Yeah,
somebody to set
that
you
makes
up.
good sense to me too. All right, so look, that's the end. That's sort of the beginning and the middle of the conversation. How about that time? Did it work?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. You guys think you could do that in your real lives?
No.
No, it'll take some practice. So I've sent everyone these guidelines that you can in your group, you can practice this. I've got scripts for you. So we went through most of the sandwich, not all of it. But I think we got far enough that you all kind of have a sense of it. So I'm going to move on and tell you a few more things, and then we'll see if we have time to do another role play or if we want to have questions. So I wanted to share with you, we talked a lot about conversation, but that's not the only way to disrupt disinformation. You can also use that same truth sandwich framework to write a letter to the editor. And just while Cathy was speaking, this launched. So this is a new letter to the editor generator from the Truth Brigade. If you're into QR codes, you can hold up your phone right now and it should take you to that spot. Actually, you can be my testers to see if anybody holds up your phone and it works. Let me know. If it doesn't work, let me know.
Nope, you're getting thumbs up here. It's working.
It's working.
Yay! That's great. Oh, that's great. So that's a generator for letter to the editor. The important thing about anything I'm telling you now is that you have to personalize it and make it authentic to you. So there's two things to keep in mind at the same time. One, use the truth sandwich framework so that you always engage people, get them thinking, and then share positive hopes. That's it. That's the framework. And personalize it so it's you talking, because if it's inauthentic, it's, nobody listens to it. So, for example, we also have, for every campaign, we have social media pre-written messages that you'll find. we also want you to even customize those. Now, because you're all in an area that there are a lot of red and rural challenges, I did want to take a moment just to mention them, because there's a lot of the rural areas have limited information, fewer libraries, less unbiased news, a lot of religious people who are well-intentioned, who mix discriminatory views with religious tenets. In the small towns, loud voices and outside influencers have a relatively larger podium. And when you're in a red and rural area, the threat of violence is larger because, you've got a smaller community, and it often attracts a lot of zealots and guns. So do stay safe and be effective if you're trying this out in conversation. Have an extra emphasis on the shared values. An example, when they say any of these things, then you need to think about what you can say that is not going to be offensive. You can say, I'm sorry, let me go back. I can give you a little bit more specifics here. Slide 37. So if they say vaccines cause autism, an example would be what we've already talked about. Sounds like we both care about our children's health. The same thing, by the way, this boys on girls teams isn't fair. That is not me talking. This is disinformation. So I use the language of the disinformer. But again, it seems like, sounds like but we care about our children. We want to make sure that they live in an equitable world. And we talked about the regulations, get that woke stuff out of my workplace. That's a good one, because what I always say to that one is, boy, it sounds like we really both care about doing a good job at work and having job security, because that's really what that's all about. The people who are afraid of people taking their jobs, it just means they're insecure about their jobs. And then in the middle of the sandwich, in the red and rural areas, if they say, I don't know who to trust, I don't know where to find the answers, you might respond, that's really hard for me too. When I look up sources I used to trust, I know they've been changed, but I'm not a scientist. I don't want to give up though. Again, you want to be very gentle and very cautious in conversations with people who, it's just different in rural areas, as I'm sure all of you know. Would you like to see what we can learn together? Maybe ask doctors or libraries or teachers. So you can see all the seeds that we've planted here. All right, so truth sandwiches always have explainers, and that means they're usually 6 to 8 pages, and they have all kinds of explanations as to why the sandwiches are written, and then also personalizations for letters to the editor, for conversations, and for the various social media platforms. So they're really great documents that have every link you'll ever need. Okay, so if you want to join the Truth Brigade, you can sign up for Friday emails, and that's where you'll get the announcements and actions. Now, you might not get one today because I might have run out of time to write it, but I'm hoping you will. And if you want to join as a group, we suggest you select someone to be what we call an ambassador. And that ambassador then attends the monthly calls, and we send out cheat sheets that the ambassador can then share with your group. I think that's the end. Yeah, all right. I'll stop talking and leave time for questions or observations or another role play. And I think, Ellen, if you want to let me know which you would like us to do together. And we also didn't have time for Cathy's questions, so maybe we should.
Yeah, if people have questions, that would be great.
Trying to get a sense of it, and I see a couple of hands up that I think want to say things. So why don't we take some questions first, and then if there's time after, we could do another role play?
Sure.
So, Mark?
In an early slide, we talked about values, but you also talked about changing mindsets, and there wasn't much of a discussion about that. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh gosh, I sure love that question. Yeah, what I was talking about is how much of this work is actually internal. Oh wow, that's so funny. I see myself watching myself on the screen. Okay. So before any conversation like this, I strongly recommend that we all just stop for 1 minute and think about our attitude to the person who is stating the thing that we feel so fundamentally is wrong. And what do we think about that person? Do we think that they're less informed than we are? Do we think that they're foolish? Do we feel somehow superior in any way? Do we, in the back of our minds, say, I got to convince this person, that's my goal? And that's the mindset I'm talking about shifting. If we can shift our internal way of thinking as much as possible, becoming non-judgmental and becoming curious as opposed to judging, then that shifts everything. And what a lot of people have also found is the shift from feeling like you have to argue and that you have to prove something to someone else to thinking about, my goal is that this person stops buying into the fact, or not the fact, buying into the lie that we're all divided and we're all different. If I can move someone even an inch toward that direction, I've accomplished an awful lot, because people convince themselves ultimately of anything. We all do that. There's only so much you can say from the outside. But someone's going to be a lot more open to thinking about things twice if we've already shifted how we're approaching the conversation. And it's the same thing even with other biases that we have, racial biases. There's just a lot of unconscious bias that we all carry around. We're all human. We've all been taught things or absorbed things. And, now with, the lies everywhere, it is coming into our brains. We're human beings. So I really appreciate the question, because I do love talking about it.
I'd like to address that a little bit as well. And it falls into the realm of sort of deep canvassing also. That's the philosophy of knocking doors or talking. I think it's much more broadly applicable than that, but talking to people and asking a lot of questions and really listening to the answers. Rather than saying, I hear you and now let me tell you why you're wrong. You're really, just asking a lot of questions, learning about them. They want to feel heard. And I think that, Jody, I think that's what you're really saying also, is when you're creating that shared reality, you're saying, I hear you. And I'm really listening to you. I just dropped a link in the chat for a short video that we show in one of our trainings. It's one of my gurus, Anand Giridharadas, and talking about deep canvassing and those deep persuasion conversations. He wrote an entire book called The Persuaders, which I highly recommend. So I think I think there's a lot more understanding of how to create those bridges in this sort of framework of deep canvassing.
Are there questions here in the audience? Yes.
Yeah, which TV news media station do you all find most trustworthy and reliable?
Cathy, I think that was a question to you about news media from your earlier presentation. What would you advise on that spectrum that was there would be the most reliable TV?
Oh, golly. I'll tell you, I have been avoiding TV news almost entirely. What I find that TV news does is it tries to awaken outrage. And to me, outrage is one of the most unproductive, unpleasant emotions you can feel. because to me, it leads you to frustration and anxiety, but not to actually doing something. And pretty much everything that I look at has to do with, is this something I can do something about? I read about things that are happening, maybe over in Ukraine or in Gaza, and I mean, it upsets me terribly, but it's not something that I can do anything about. So I can donate, but I'm not going to drop my work here in Arizona and go to the Middle East or Ukraine. So I can't do a whole lot about that. So in terms of television, one thing I left out of my presentation though, is where I do actually turn for news on TV is comedians. And a lot of people do, especially young people, turn to comedians to get their news. So I'm talking about John Oliver and Jon Stewart and The Daily Show and Hassan Minhaj, who I absolutely love. So that is actually, I watch Colbert, I watch The Daily Show. And that is a sad commentary.
I do want to comment. I do want to comment to the question that on the DORR website, there is a list of media resources that is on there. And I do urge everybody to take a look at that. Echoing what Cathy said, I don't like to watch my news because it's always presented with emotion, no matter what the topic is or whether it's a general media outlet or something that is known for having a bias. Either way, there's always emotion in that. The days of Walter Cronkite, are done with a poker face, right? So I find reading my news is more neutral. It's my interpretation and what I'm getting out of it. But please do look at the DORR website for that information about suggested. We're 9 months in to the administration, and media outlets have capitulated in ways that I never thought imaginable. Right, and succumbing to pressure to remove exactly some of the people that you were talking about, Cathy, like the ones that guide us through sarcasm or help widen perspective. So it's a challenging time for news. Other questions in the audience? I saw one back here. Yes, Sherry.
Real quick, I want to ask, what do you watch first thing in the morning, or when you wake up in the morning? What's the first thing that you look at to find out what's happened overnight? And then regarding Truth Brigade, I'm a huge Truth Brigader. I'm from the Camp Verde Indivisible, and I keep trying to find people that can do these things. My suggestion to a lot of you guys, because listening to the presentation, you're like, oh my God, that sounds great, but I can't do that. There are some people that have that natural ability to have conversations with people. So my suggestion for DORR is to find those 1 or 2 people who go, oh yeah, this makes sense to me. I can do this. Become the ambassador for DORR so that when you guys get the weekly presentations, that person or those persons can get the information and spread it out to you guys, because the more you do these kinds of things, the easier it gets. But when you first look at this, you go, I can't do a sandwich like that. I need a script. That's me. I need a script. So if you can find some people to help you to devise scripts that will come naturally to you eventually, it will get easier to do. So I'm a huge Truth Brigade fan. I just haven't quite gotten there yet.
We're a huge you fan also.
What?
Oh, we're a huge fan of yours.
Oh, thank you.
We have
Whoever
another
was just
question
talking. That
in
was
the audience, and then after that, maybe you could see if there are questions on Zoom. But
As a newcomer, where do we go?
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm gonna have to jump off, so I can only take about one more question.
Okay.
Yeah, me too, actually. I have
Okay.
11.
Okay, we're gonna shoot it to Zoom just to make sure that there are any questions there that are being answered. Shelley or Ellen, can you see if there's something there?
No questions in the chat.
Okay, all right. Jody, thank you so much.
Thank you.